out, and you're going to find out. You're watching the Motion Design Hotline. I'm Evan Abrams, joined as usual with Kyle Hamrick.
Hello.
And today on the Motion Design Hotline, we have gone corporate. So what does that mean?
Polos.
Yeah, well, I was going to say I've got a puffy sweater vest around here that I can wear, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe we could wear a hoodie or something, because today on the program where we usually, oh yeah, you got a hoodie on. Yeah, you're ready to do some coding. So on this program, on the Motion Design Hotline, we solve your motion design and After Effects problems. You send us your gripes, and we crush those gripes into the fine wine that is knowledge. So on this, we're going to be addressing, as we have done on previous things, a very popular art style. A very popular and good art style called Corporate Memphis that I think dominated a lot of my career and Kyle's, and kind of overlaps with the rise of motion design as a category in general.
Yeah.
I guess that feels fair to say.
Probably partially responsible for motion design being a broader category of thing nowadays, and that there being a lot of money behind motion design. So a lot of people, the name Corporate Memphis is kind of a intentionally snarky one, which was coined by a fellow named Mike Merrill. It was not a self-given title for the style. No. We'll get into some of that in a minute.
Yeah, you don't get to choose your own nickname. But if you would like to choose what we talk about on this program, you can use the link in the description. How's that for a segue? So you can... it works best when I call it out right after I do it. So use the link in the description to enjoy the form where you can send us problems, tell us who you are, what you're doing, what we can help with. You can send us project files to assist you through. And if you want to see any of the project files based on the stuff that you see us make here on the show, if you want to dissect those are all available at motiondesignhotline.com, a real website for real people.
Like you.
Just like you and me and us. Unless you're a robot. If you're a robot, say beep boop in the chat. I'm trying to think, anything we need to get into before we get into it, I guess.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, if you do have any questions about anything you see, let us know. Or just say hello. I see quite a few folks over on Behance already saying hello. A lot of our regulars. Hello, regulars. Good to see you all. If you're not one of our regulars, let us know as well.
And if you self-identify as irregular, you can let us know that too. That's what we like.
Welcome.
Oh, okay, good. We got one robot in the chat. Found him.
Yep, I knew it.
Got him. Okay, so Corporate Memphis. I think, unless you're incredibly young, and congratulations, you have so much to look forward to. But Corporate Memphis was pretty ubiquitous with what. Maybe I'll just call up the Millinote that we had, because that'll be.
Yeah, I mean, I've got visual examples.
Okay, let's go to Kyle's screen for visual examples.
Yeah, so the well, that's not. I gave you the wrong screen, I guess. So
well, then we're gonna go to Evan's screen.
Hang on. All right, I'm gonna break everything. Let me see if I can just change screens. Here we go.
Yeah.
Now you should have the correct one.
Okay. Now
sorry, I hadn't actually seen that yet. There we go. So this style that we've all seen with it's very centered on people, but we'll put an asterisk on that.
Yeah.
And these people tend to have very exaggerated proportions, and they tend to be very universalized like this, where they have maybe unnatural skin tones, or a lot of times they'll have these sort of quirky geometric bodies. And this style sort of took over the tech world in, I believe, 2017. And while it has now largely fallen out of fashion as of the last couple of years, you definitely still see a lot of elements of this all over the place, and there's still plenty of people asking for this. So we're going to be kind of talking a little bit about this style and some elements of it, and then we have a few examples that, whether you like the visual style or not, should be some helpful After Effects tips for animating things. And truthfully, I think, the example I made, you'd probably still see this all over the place, just with more texture added to it.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. The only way to get away from corporate Memphis is to just add some grain or something. I don't know.
Yep. There you go. Some nice grainy shadows, or
Yeah.
a little like rough texture in the background or something. I don't know.
Well, and okay, so a big part of that, corporate Memphis is, as you're seeing on Kyle's screen, pretty light, right? Like, there's not a lot of stuff. You can define this with a bunch of shapes. If these are just vectors that are moving around, that's not a huge load on a machine to do, okay?
Mhm.
But in trying to differentiate or whatever, if you could zoom in on, sorry, I'm going to use some corporate speak. Kyle, if you could double click on the group of people around the boardroom there, who are they got like a big red light bulb on their head.
So many people around the boardroom.
Hey, could you just double click on the very generic
it doesn't look
group of people?
here.
Yeah,
If I can.
embiggen.
Yeah. Let me kind of pull it out of this group here. This
Okay.
happened to be a pretty small one, so we don't have the quality.
Yeah, but when animating this, what would end up happening is this would sort of balloon into, okay, let's individuate everything into different layers, right? So the people go into comps and the layers, blah, 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 blah. So like each of those big leaves would become a layer.
Yep.
So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then each of those ferns would become a layer. Blah, 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 blah. But then each of the leaves on the ferns would become layers. And then, so right now, we haven't animated any people, but we're going to have some swaying plants that are now taking up about 50 layers. Okay. Now that's probably not a huge lift, but then people, for whatever reason, insisted, well, I have to turn all of those into shape layers. Stop it. You meant to leave those as AI files, because unless you're doing something hyper granular with this, you do not need to be.
You don't need to change the vector paths of the things. They just need to be an object.
Just don't do it. And for whatever reason, this is also an era in which people over-rigged, and I will say over-prepared. So the gentleman with the purple tie hanging out, what is he doing if we animate him? So this was kind of the key consideration. If only one arm and his torso and head are going to move, that's it. That's all the layers you need to subdivide. But people would slice up leg, arm, hand, slice. That guy would turn into about 60 individual layers. And then the tie is getting rigged and the leg is getting rigged. And this is because, it's for whatever reason, to make it seem more alive and human, we're going to have all of these little micro movements that he's going to move sideways, and one of the legs is going to open as he moves out, and he's going to gesture a little bit, and the tie is going to flap a little bit. Like, micro movements up the wazoo towards the end of this thing. So that's...
And yes, that does sort of make him feel more alive, but what if he's not even what you're supposed to be looking at? I feel like, just from looking at this illustration, this person in the white here is probably the one talking to the group and like giving this idea. So you might just be creating a lot of distraction over here by over animating all these other people beyond just like nodding along.
Yeah. And quite frankly, this is going to be a whopping 5-second scene. Light bulb pops up, badoop. Everyone reacts to the light bulb by moving away from it. That doesn't matter because no one is even seeing those people. This was... Anyway, I'm getting heated.
But what about the plants, Evan?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The plants also will respond to the light bulb. This was, I will say, a kind of era of excess when it comes to this kind of tertiary movement of things. Yes. Anyway, that's where I'm at with that. Kyle, I want to go to my screen.
Over it, I think, is the official declaration then.
Look, I want to kvetch for a little bit before we move too forward on this. I want to complain about Humaaans. Now, I think you've all heard me say these words. I say human in a weird way. This is part of why.
Mm-hmm.
So towards kind of the zenith of this thing, this came out. And this Humaaans is a service that will help you mix and match and create more humans So you can mix and match and produce all types of human. Every human you can imagine is in this
Literally a
game.
third of the images in my little example board here are with
Yeah.
these people.
Yeah, and well, that's because it became a way for a company
Hmm?
to hire like a junior or get an intern to produce all of their graphics with this. And oh, hey, so squiggle plants are back.
Yep.
Um, but this company really kind of came in with kind of the big hammer towards the middle of it to say, hey, what if we helped the proliferation of this style get even more? And I'll say this. Kyle and I were trying like, oh, let's find some stock images and whatever. And I found I could not differentiate human made, um, corporate Memphis graphics with AI generated corporate Memphis graphics. That may be down to how much of it has simply been ingested,
Probably
or
that.
it is also a factor of the style itself being blobulous and indistinct, that it does not have as much to grab onto as a thing.
And crucially, I wanna say this in a way that isn't throwing shade on anyone, but
Mm,
literally the origins of this style, which we can talk about in a
yeah,
second, it was built to be scalable. It
yeah.
was built to be easily versioned and made into, 1,000 things for Facebook, and
Hmm.
thus that's why it's easy to become things like this, because it was made to be kind of modular and scalable.
Yeah, and it's yeah. I want to make clear the people who got paid to make this stuff. We love them, and they are our brothers and sisters and siblings of all types. Um, the clients whose demands punish our punish our team, we are not as sympathetic towards them, especially in an era where the demand was to differentiate and the directive was to fit in. So that's the
Mhm.
that was the trouble for so long. Make mine like Facebook but unique. Hold on, stop.
Yep.
Anywho's, should we go through history some more? How much time do we have
let's
here?
let's do a quick history run, and then we can
Okay.
dive into After Effects.
All right, right. Off to back to
Um,
Kyle's screen.
yeah, I do have a few images here. So while it does not necessarily have a lot to actually do with the style known as Memphis, um, which Evan could probably expound upon if we like.
Sure.
Basically, a bunch of design dorks hanging out in the early 80s, and they happen to be listening to a Bob Dylan record that
Mm-hmm.
has Memphis as part of the title. And so, hence, this wacky style that we think of as very sort of like stereotypically 80s is known as Memphis. And honestly, our show branding owes a fair
Yeah.
amount to this kind of style.
Well, yeah, we're
Um,
we're 80s kids, I guess. I mean, I'm more of
yeah,
a 90s kid. So like this aesthetic of a thing holds a lot of nostalgia for us, like that's when our taste is formed. So, but
I guess viewers, you can decide for yourself whether the things that we've been showing you actually have anything to do with this. But I'm sure most of us have seen the tidal wave of explainer videos from the um, first half of the 2010s, I guess,
mhm.
which were overrun by these people. Um, and at some
I've
point,
seen
someone, yep,
my
and
favorite
these,
particles to generate are
yep,
these people.
and these also not even quite people. Um, and so at some point, someone rightfully decided, like, maybe we need something that's a little less, impersonal than this. And this happened to coincide with the once again death of skeuomorphism.
Mm,
We had for a while been having everything look like the thing that it is, and then decided that we were done with that, and so everything had to be kind of abstract and fun, I guess,
sure.
colorful. This particular thing, I don't think this icon necessarily came out at exactly this time, but it felt like a good little thing. Um, so we get sort of the real birth of this style is in 2017. Buck created this style that they called alegría, which means joy in Spanish. They created this for Facebook, and it was intentionally meant to be scalable. like I said, you can see it in some of their own words here. Although, just for what it's worth, a designer named Alice Lee made some of this stuff for Slack just a couple months prior. So you can decide for yourself where this originates from. But a lot of design people have had a lot of opinions about this style ever since. Um, it was sort of ostensibly created to give big tech a friendlier face and to universalize things with stuff like this, where you're kind of representing everyone by representing no one. And I feel like you can kind of make, draw your own implications there. But there is a lot of utility here as well. Like if you need to do mock-ups of apps and websites and stuff, a lot of times making all that stuff with lines and circles, it makes sense from a design perspective because then you're not creating all these, distracting text elements that also don't really matter maybe. And it does make things universal and scalable when you can literally just like build one body and swap colors and heads, and now you've got 10 characters, right? There's a lot of there's a lot of value in certain aspects of this, but yeah.
But what is a human if not swapping shirts and heads, Kyle?
Exactly. But it helps us feel better about big tech, which was who was pouring money into a lot of these things, and so that's where we've leaned into in our examples today.
True.
For example, I grabbed a couple of the tropiest of house plants here, and this is a faux ad for a smart pot that I'll say, tells you when to water the plant, and it does so by monitoring everything you do, of course, as the little eye indicates. But you shouldn't feel weird about that at all because, we'll put some twee ukulele music on this ad, and these nice friendly pastel colors help tell you that everything is friendly and fun.
Yeah. So, and just to point out, have a look at what's going on in Kyle's example, micro interactions.
Yep.
There's no reason that flipping through photos would cause the objects in the photo to undulate. That's not
and yet here we are.
That's not what is happening. Maybe a camera is moving from one to look at the other. That wouldn't cause the leaves to move. No. The pots themselves are being slid, and the action of sliding should therefore translate to the movement of branches. If anything shows up in the frame, it's gotta be waggling and shifting.
Thanks, Evan. I'm glad you're on board.
Not only am I on board, I'm ready to invest. So that's what Kyle's got coming along. I have opted to show some people. Here's a person.
Love it.
Let's look at one now.
That could be me.
It's me. So this, one of the things I'm going to talk about is this style was so big that it spawned a bunch of tools in order to do it faster. So the sort of limber tools very much produce arms and legs that are on brand with this type of a thing.
As rubber hose.
Yeah. So rubber hose is another one. Duick is more for doing all sorts of things, but there is a kind of puppet pin approach, but I don't think there's anything sort of corporate Memphis-y unique to the puppet pin rigging approach. That's why we're not going to be sort of touching that sort of today. But geometric arms and noodle arms are sort of the ideas that I'll be talking about over here. And critically, we got to enjoy our screens. So I'm going to be talking about some wavy hair and the wacky ways in which we produce very specifically unreal hair as we are blown away by whatever's on the screen. Pretty classic. This person
I just want to let our audience know if they want to scream while their hair gets blown while they're watching this episode, that is okay with us.
Yeah, this is you right now, guys. It's like looking in a mirror.
Yep.
It's crazy. Me. Fringe. Sorry, people in the UK, I believe, call this a fringe type haircut. Bangs in America.
Yep.
So there's that. Wavy waves going all over the place, be they shirts, flags, hair, whatever, anything that can blow in the wind, let's blow it. So, Kyle, let's cut back to your screen. I'm curious about these plants. Let's get hydrated.
Sure. Yeah, so I took two different approaches here, and I thought these would both be things that we could sort of usefully explore as a way to kind of dive into shape layers because they are built in yeah, two different ways, but with a lot of similarities. So these Monstera plant leaves are, of course, just from Illustrator. I grabbed this from Adobe Stock and grabbed a couple leaves I liked and kind of took away some of the, that bit and replaced it with just a simple stroke as the thing, right? So then you import those over here to, oops, that's there. Here we go. And so, as Evan suggested earlier, this is the kind of thing. The leaves themselves don't need any, what I like to call internal animation. Okay.
Mm.
And so, you don't need those to be shape layers. They would be much heavier and more complex to deal with if they were. So, just leave them as an Illustrator layer, move the anchor point to the place that they need to connect to the thing, and then you can rig up the aspects that you need here. Here we go. So each of these is just a simple stroke, and then the points of that stroke, the leaf is connected to one end of that, and you get the appropriate movement here, okay? And so I have done all of that. Let me just add one more. Just sort of drew something like this. Let's make this a nice bright color that you can see and crank this up a little bit here. I'm going to exaggerate to make it easier to see. So let's come up here. This is my, we'll say, extra stem, right? And let's open this fella up. And inside our shape layer, we have our stroke. Now you can see this gets just a little bit thinner up at the top, and that is thanks to the ability to taper. So I will just taper this a little bit, doing it from the end here. And then let's give that width a little bit back so it doesn't go all the way to nothing. And if you want, maybe you could change butt cap to round cap so you get this roundy edges. And hey, looky there, great stem, right?
Oh yeah,
And
and
then
maybe we should
go ahead.
say we have a lot more tools to do this now than when we started,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. A lot of these things were done the hard way 5, 6 years ago, and now they're much easier to do.
Yeah.
Um,
I just think about how the track mat system, right? If that had
yeah,
been around 5 years ago, it
yep,
would have saved
yep.
quite a lot of pain.
Yep. And this taper did not exist
Mm.
at the time, nor did the thing I'm about to do, which is select this path and then come up into my Windows scripts, and find create nulls from paths, which is built right into After Effects. And I want to have the points of this path follow some nulls that it's going to create. So I will choose points follow nulls. And then you'll see it creates a null at the top and the bottom. And so when I move these things, now my path follows those. And so it becomes very easy both to animate this stem, but also let's just, didn't mean to do that. Just want to name this extra leaf, bring this up here, close this bit, and we can just move this leaf over here and parent it to, let's see, this one. Yep, that one. And now, ding, we've got, I can go ahead and get rid of any, this one doesn't have any animation on it, but now I move that null around and look at this beautiful little rig that was actually quite easy to do. So from here, it's just adding the appropriate keyframes so that you get all your little micro interactions. You could probably just do all of this just with position and rotation of this null because your base doesn't really need to move, right? And
Mm.
I bet this little bit of motion like this is probably going to do most of what you need. And now you've got a nice realistic plant. Obviously, we're being very jokey about this style, but like this is still a very useful technique for a lot of things. If you need to put a bunch of leaves along the edge of a thing, it obviously gets a little more complex, but you're kind of using the same ideas to get there.
Mm. Yeah, and your leaves, those are black and white, and then you tinted them, right?
100%. That's
Yeah.
all it is. I just brought in those black and white objects, and because this entire style is meant to be very flat, I just added a tint effect, and so it takes the black and white of that input and brings it somewhere else. And
Yeah.
so those are both easy to tweak and also easy to connect if you want them all to match up.
Yeah, because I remember that being a huge thing as well, that because of most of the clients that you would deal with were from the world of technology. And in the world of technology, they use a type of working that is called iterative or Scrum, whereas we use a type of
Meaning
working.
that they don't want to make any decisions about things until they see the final version?
Bingo bango.
Okay.
Whereas we must use a type of working called waterfall, and meaning that from each phase, things must be completed to move forward. By which I mean the script must be completed before we say the script, and then the storyboards must flow from the script. And so if you come back and change a script, adding or removing or rephrasing, it turns out everything gets a little wackadoo. Anyway, the point is, most often you would see, oh, well, actually, our corporate colors actually just changed midstream. Your
Yep.
what's just did what?
Oh, we hired a new creative director mid-project, and
Yeah.
so they want to shake things up.
Yeah. So this was a pretty, I think, big workaround that okay, all assets are now made in black and white, and then we tint them. Or all assets are made in 3 colors, and then we tritone them. So it was a lot of trying to prevent future pain with current planning, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I don't think we have the time today to really go too much into the keyframing. Honestly, I don't think it's anything too fancy. It's a little bit of right to left position moves, some rotation, and then, we get into the graph editor here, but we've talked about this on other shows. So we'll maybe save that for another day. Let me quickly show you, in case you ever need to make a snake plant. This is also a little exploration of the taper. So just another thing that you can think about. So all these leaves are exactly the same rig, and it's just drawing a path like this, okay? And then we're going to open up that layer. And pro tip, if you hold Control or Command, when you click on this layer twirly, it opens up everything, so you don't have to keep clicking away. And again, we'll go into this taper setting and bring that end length all the way up. Get a nice taper. Let's bring that stroke width way, way up here, okay? And then if you look just below taper, you have wave. And so you can apply a wave to that stroke as well. And you can start changing the wavelength, seeing how many of those wobbles we have. Let's come back up here, maybe open up that end width a little bit, or actually the ease on that end. There we go. So we get that kind of nice blobular look, right? And then to do the rest of this, you're kind of getting into the innards of shape layers here and the way that these work. We're going to use this one path to drive all of this. So let's make a duplicate of the stroke, Control D, and just come in here, maybe pick a different color, push that stroke width out a little bit, and now you have the outside of your plant bit, right? Let's go ahead and make one more duplicate of the stroke, and I would name these if I was going to be helpful to myself and anyone else. Like, you can just name things inside shape layers, just like anything else. And so this would be a case where I'd then, choose some interior color like this and bring this way, way down, maybe get rid of that wave that's on here. Just take that back down to 0 and just kind of find the right settings so that you get that lovely little wobbly plant leaf. And the reasons that you might put it all on one are because now you can take, oops, didn't mean to do that. You could take that path that we have here and look at that. All of those things are connected to this one thing. So whether you want to animate the path itself or connect it to a null like you saw in the other one, or just use this as kind of a design strategy and then do what I did here using an effect, which is called, I think we're under distort, right? Yep. CC bend it, and you can put your points right, probably do start and end here, and then you can just bend this thing around like this, which is how I animated this particular thing.
Heck yeah, bend it.
Look at that. Yeah. And of course, you get a little deeper. You could easily add texture and shading to these. Some of that ends up requiring other layers, but hopefully that's a good little insight to shape layers for folks.
Yeah, and I think you can change the phase of the wave, I think also. So like If you want to look like these are undulating for whatever reason, i.e. seaweeds, for all
Look at that.
sorts of...
You could link them together, or you could have them a little bit offset if you want to create, kind of even just a little bit like that kind of creates an interesting design. Then you could link one phase to the other one, plus 20 or something like that. And then, yep, seaweed instantly.
But yeah, like, oh, it's a wonderful bit of business. And I think the other thing that's kind of wild sometimes is, I don't know, how much we had to translate a lot of things coming from Illustrator or in many cases like a Figma or something. Like, okay, now bringing it to After Effects. Okay, well, a lot of those things don't really translate, my dudes.
Sometimes it's better to just rebuild the thing so that you actually have control over the stuff you would want to be able to change. And like in this case, you build it once and then you just make duplicates and sort of mess with the settings a little bit. And now you've got all of these that can easily be controllable.
Yeah. Also, the heartbreaking time when I have to tell clients that, well, the animation costs so much because you don't have a team making all of the humans that are repurposed also for your website. So anyway, hey, let's go to Evan's screen real quick and talk about some other fun stuff. Let's get our hairs blown back because you were doing some wavy stuff. I want to show people some other waves. Yeah. Here is someone who's really enjoying their computer. So whatever app we're selling them, they are loving it. And the great thing about sort of hair or whatever in hairs in this style is it's kind of just a wave. Now, there are a lot of kind of ways we might kind of bring this back. Let's say we start here. Let's start our journey. We got this person. Whoa. they got some hair.
I kind of prefer that like crazy skullet style there.
It's a wild look. I'm not gonna lie. There we go. So we'll just go ahead and cover that up. So here's a person, and they are just regular enjoying the computer. You can tell because they're really getting blown back by what's going on. Just the force of enjoyment is hurting them so bad they're being buffeted.
I feel like you should have had some like content lines coming out of the screen to emphasize.
A bunch of memes and emojis are just smacking them across the dome as they go.
We'll get that on version 2.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. Minimum viable product there. So what we need is a little bit of hair. Now, what you might think is here. I'll just remove these things. Okay, the hair is coming back like this. All right, and the hair, well, then I'll just parent the hair to the head. And if I come into the rotation, I undo the stuff that I do with that. If I just parent some hair to the head, well, we know that's not correct, right? Because it's just a rectangle folding out of the back of their brain. That's not...
I kind of want some hair that does that, honestly.
It just comes directly... They just attached gelled directly.
An extruded tube. Yep.
Yeah, it's perfect. So if we bang on this, which is taking the value of this rotation and then adding it to the rotation of, in this case, the thing it's parented to times -1. So as the head rotates one direction, this is rotating the opposite direction, which gives you this idea that it is sort of translating off of the back of it. Okay, that's a little bit closer, right? That's a little bit closer, but I want this to wave. Now, if I deploy something like a wave warp onto this, and let's say I just isolate, well, there's no reason to do that. At this point, it looks pretty herky-jerky and weird. And it looks weird, even though this wave is indeed a warpin', because... The wave is moving in one way, and the movement of the head is jerking in the other way. Well, that doesn't feel good.
Fighting there.
Yeah, and the idea behind this entire style is to be calming and nice. So even if you're gonna have something like this, this can't be it. This ain't it. This feels like a glitch.
Evan, there's a very important call out here that
who's the Doug?
Treasured Nickelodeon show Doug, that Roger Klotz, the villain of the show, did indeed have a hairstyle that was almost exactly this.
Well, you can tell he's a Corporate Memphis character, right? He's gonna go.
Perhaps this is where the whole thing actually originates from. We can blame Doug.
Yeah, you can tell that this guy has some libertarian thoughts. So let's go back to my screen. Uh, I don't think I remember what that guy's whole deal was, but I'm going to assume that
He's just kind of a jerk, as I recall.
he's just a mean boy. So the kind of workaround for this is that I need to define the hair sort of as its own thing, and then I'm going to cut into the hair or remove from it various other static elements, right? So in this case, let's just kind of shear this back a little bit. So here we go. Well, the hair is still here, and it's still kind of doing the same thing, right? There's nothing particularly changed about that. We've got the same rotational change going on. But what is going to change is that I'm going to stick things that I tend to call a wave cutter. So here's one that's just going to hang out at the back, right? So it is relative to the screen. And this thing itself, you can make them in all kinds of interesting ways. This one is done using a displacement map. This is a method that I've talked about on here before. I don't know when, but we can go back in time. It seems kind of complicated, but its sole purpose is to create a straight edge that then undulates and deviates as it gets further away from that straight edge. So as opposed to using a pinned effect like a turbulent noise or a wave warp, that the point is that we want good control over this kind of taper. Anyway, download the project files if you want to get into it too deeply. But the point is, we put that somewhere, and then we just go back to our hairpiece, this hairpiece, and we use the set mat effect. And the set mat, pretty critically, right? There's a few things you got to do if you're going to use the set mat, and one of them is you really want to make sure you're collapsing some transformations, so everything's relative to this frame. And then, as you can see, it's getting cut off here, and we can still put stuff behind it if we so desired, right? So it is indeed getting cut off. So then we just have to keep doing more cuts. And part of that is just other cutters that are going to hang out at their important places. So let's just click, get those going. It can get a little bit dicey. I'm not going to say that it doesn't get dicey, because these wavy warps over here have some really specific stuff going on that keeps them anchored to the head in one axis, but not in the other axis. And this is using the dreaded to comp expression. So again, we're taking the position of this null, which is parented to the head, and it's living on the head, and we need its kind of comp relative space. So that's why we're doing to comp anchor point of that null layer, and then we're just taking the vertical component of that. If that sounds like a whole lot of crazy stuff, you want to make sure you watch the episode of Motion Design Hotline where we talk about the to comp quite a lot.
To comp or not to comp, I believe it is so cleverly named.
Yeah, a little callback to the archive there. But the result is movement plus stability, which is the sort of thing that you have to balance in these pieces. Now, a lot of the times this would really translate into, well, we're just going to use traditional animation techniques. And a lot of that is because the rise of Corporate Memphis also corresponds with the precarity of the animation sector. So we got a lot of people coming from traditional animation coming to the booming industry of motion design. And then we end up with a lot of very characterful stuff, but they're bringing these labor intensive methodologies with them, which has perfect, beautiful, stylistic, results. But,
perhaps sometimes at odds with a product that needs to be changed 5 times before it's approved.
Exactly. A lot of tension and creativity out there with this. So there's this. Let's do another characterful thing. Let's get very geometric with this cool person. So this Humaaans, we don't need to pay too much attention to all of these guide layers. So this is the thing that's called very geometric. I plomp it into its own comp. Hey, those guides are all gone. So
yeah, quickly, Evan, what's this person doing?
So they are watering their plant, obviously.
With the app on their phone. Yeah.
Yeah, they're feeding it data, which is what the pot
Mm,
wants. So
love it.
they're saying like, just bring your data to the pot, check in with the
Yum, yum,
pot
yum,
if
yum,
it's
yum.
angry, and it'll reward you with a heart, which you can't do anything with, and you've spent a lot of your time kind of getting these things
And money.
and money, yep, your
Yep.
time and money, to create nothing, but giving everything to the pot. So it's pretty.
Meow meow beans, if anyone gets that reference.
Yeah, enjoy the crap out of those, or becoming the mayor of a place on Foursquare, or
There we
any of these
go.
other
Yep.
weird things that we were doing. Anyway, the point is, this creature is defined, and I do think of humans as creatures, by just geometry. We are an animal that is in love with its own intelligence, nonetheless. So we have hips, we have a torso, we have a circular head, but then we just have arms and legs shapes. And really, if we strip away a lot of those, so we're going to take away the arms, we're going to take away the legs, and we're going to take away, where's that other arm? Let's get that other arm out of there. There it is. So here we go. These are sort of the attach points of reality as these things move through the space. There's not a lot to it. This is your regular animation stuff. We're still using the principles of animation to make this stuff happen. But like I said, so much of Corporate Memphis informed tools that were created just to do this. And obviously these have gone through a lot of iterations. But this idea of these tubular arms was a huge thing. And so those are literally just defined by a plugin I like a lot. It's called Limber. So if you enjoy making arms and legs, and critically, if you don't need the heavy lift of a Duick that will make your system slow sometimes.
And so just to kind of clarify here,
Yeah,
the entire arm and the entire leg is just one layer. You don't need to break it up into the separate pieces, right? Like you
exactly.
would
Yeah.
if you were kind of pinning this together, sort of paper doll style, like a lot of this is, was traditionally done prior to these tools.
Yeah, so this is, and it's an inverse kinematic relationship. So these two circles drive where the stuff is. So that's what's sort of making it work. And obviously this program has gone through some changes, but we also can produce noodle arms in exactly the same way. So if you've got some things, so we would start it with some points, and let's just go ahead and do a little demo of that. So here's some points. We would say, all right, well, the limb is roughly going to go from here to here to here. Click, click, click. And then we say, hey, make it. Give me that new limb. And then pow, pow, pow. I want a taper style. All right, go ahead and give it a new name. New. Hit OK. It computes, and then we get this kind of monstrosity that we can use. This kind of insectoid creature, right? That works like that. Now let's just go back. Sometimes we had more noodly arms, so let's go ahead and make one of those out of the indicated shapes. The type, we could just leave it as circle things. We could make it a shape thing. I'm going to say, give me a path thing. And we're going to hit, again, call it new. And now we have the noodle arm. So the noodle arm then again has a lot of these interesting kind of ideas in it. So let's go to the curvature.
And if you actually need to get super noodly and have things like sort of loop over on themselves, this same creator, Steve, also has another tool called Bendio. So you can do straight up like arms that loop around on themselves.
Yeah.
Or other things, not arms, but
yeah. So these things are super useful, especially when we are sort of trying to define, how the thing looks. And often they're not drawn with the intent that they'll move in any way. So we end up sort of recreating the limbs in here. And then we can also like stick art to them as well. But the thing I wanted to show was sort of how ubiquitous it is to just grab these and change them. So if this is not, if you're like, oh, well, these are pretty rigid. I don't know if I'm loving it, right? Well, if I simply use the same anchors and give it a noodly left arm instead of the original left arm, it's pretty much exactly the same, right? we don't lose much
Hmm.
in the doing there, right? Now, obviously, we have a little bit fewer options when it comes to kind of styling this stuff, but you can see that movement wise, nothing has changed, right? I think that's the key takeaway is that the styles may change, the movement is the same. And what is that movement? Okay, good. We got 15 minutes that I can we can go deep on this, right?
Well, and crucially, that also maybe you're about to get into this, but you could build a rig for this character once, and then literally just keep swapping the art that is connected to it to make 10 different people in this video or across a whole campaign.
Yeah. So like let's just look at the torso, right? So this person is defined as shape this, shape this. Well, okay, we need a variety of other people. Well, how hard is it to change that? It's about as difficult as changing this contents. So what we're going to do, let's just go ahead and grab our pen tool right here. And I'm going to just add some more points to this. All right. And add a point over here. And we're going to delete this point here. Anyway, this is a different type of person. You see,
Totally different person.
Our company loves all bodies. As long as they buy our product, we love them. So there you go. That's a new person, right?
Yep.
And then, what if I wanted a little bit different? Eh? Well, what's more different than this? Oh, I know. Just flip it upside down. So that's pretty easy. You can just go ahead and take this. All right. There you go.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
It's amazing.
oh. Shape layers are great for this because the layer moves, the contents are just there. Okay. So we're literally, think of it like we're shifting around a pane of glass and we're changing what's stuck to the glass. And that also means that from this object, if they say, I wish it had some more identifying things.
Can you maybe put our logo on the chest to help people remember?
Hey, you got it. Hey, boss, you got it. Doot, 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 doot. There you go. So one beautiful logo. So we know that they work here.
Perfect.
Crushed it. So we got this, so that shows up as a shape. And like you would get a lot of interesting stuff. So let's see, as the torso is moving, so let me just come in here and get its kind of movement-y stuff. What do I want to do? I want also position. I don't know why I did it that way. I want the position of the shape thing. What was this called? That's in shape 1, right?
Devlin is calling out that you, of course, made the logo upside down, but I think that's important because this is the bizarro evil version of our Hotline company.
Yeah,
we would never do such a thing.
We're in distress is why it's upside down. We're experiencing naval distress. Okay, so anyway, when you're working inside of shape layers, one of the things is that the little bits can get kind of all over the place. Just remember that it's a layer. It's a layers within layers. But I'm going to turn on the position and the scale and maybe even the rotation of the internal organs of this thing. And so that when the creature moves back, I'm going to go ahead and shift this a little bit that way. And we are going to unlink those scales, and I'm going to scrunch it a little as it moves that way. And I'm going to maybe rotate it a bit. Okay. So what happens as we move back? Let's just make sure that if this, all right. So that's going to match.
Oh my goodness. Oliver, love it. This person works for Motion Design Notline, which is a fake show for fake people.
That's right. A bunch of fakers.
I'm screenshotting that. That's going to come back.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So yeah. Well, that bunch of fakers. All right. So as this thing is moving, because we've now put a little point on it, we can make it feel like they're rotating as they move by doing this fakey fakedness with this part. So the more things you add just one little bit of detail can tell you more about what is happening with the thing. And then similarly, if you want to make it seem like it's twisting, you would just get the arms kind of moving in and out as it goes. But I hope that kind of makes sense with how we would sort of modify the thing, that people kind of like get it. That if the skeleton is good, the things we pin to the skeleton are what we are shifting. The actual keyframes themselves, yes, we have time to get into that, are pretty critical and useful. So they're all arcs. That's the critical thing to do.
Yeah. Important note here. Yes, we've been making a lot of fun of the style today, but it does rest on a lot of like still universal animation principles, regardless of what the thing looks like. So
yes,
we're trying to be somewhat serious amidst all of this.
Yeah, because I mean, the truth of the matter is a whole lot of very talented people worked on this stuff, producing some of, we would say, some real high watermark work that like was inspirational into getting a lot of people into the field. And I mean, as I say, like, we are a craft, right? And if the work inspires more people to want the work, that's what we want. You know, it's more work is more work for us, even if you don't personally like the style. But as my furniture professor likes to say, if our clients didn't have bad taste, we wouldn't have any work. So it's like we must be taste agnostic if we want to survive. And that is just, the process is the thing that I've loved this whole time. And so it could be the ugliest thing in the world.
Find ways to help evolve it to make it better.
Yeah, like it doesn't matter. It could be the ugliest thing, but as long as you put a lot of good craftsmanship into it, you can make that ugly thing awesome. If that makes sense. Like, the bones are good. So anyway, so the point here though is that this thing is moving in gentle, kind of playful arcs, and that it works outward from the thing. So the central objects are moving first, and then oh, I don't need to toggle notes. What I want to do is toggle keyframes, and then we're going to observe some of those. So the torso is what's leading, and then the hips get into it. The biggest part of the shape moves first, and then the other things kind of whip out from them. And that's part of what makes a playful feeling movement, is that they're kind of lurchy and funny and bouncy, and that the extremities are just bouncing along. So that's
exaggerated is the term we would use properly.
Yeah. Like, this is also a time when people were pointing to the principles of animation in order to figure out what they wanted to do with this stuff. And it wasn't simply, we're going to go from A to B, right? We gotta cruise into it. So they're coming down and they're offering the object here. So hopefully any of that kind of makes sense and lands with people, and that you can take it forward into any of the stuff that you're doing now, and whether it's in this style or not, because despite people's, I think, revulsion to it in some ways, it's undeniably, like, it's undeniably crafted, if that makes sense.
Well, and I think the way that things move is a big part of how you give them charm.
Yeah.
Which, again, this goes back to animation principles. There's a great video from, probably 12 years ago at this point, but it's about taking principles from the book The Illusion of Life, which was from a couple of the key Disney animators from sort of the golden days. But it's literally just using a cube to depict all of these things. And that's a great example of, like, the way that things move help you feel a certain way about them, even regardless of what they look like. So you can make a circle be charming or funny or feel alive by the way that you move it and squash it and make it bounce around and all that. And that, folks, is kind of the power of what we do here.
Yeah, like, that's, I think you said it great, man. Like, that, even the cube can become charming. So, despite how people feel about, oh, this aesthetic doesn't grab me, like, well, that's good. Well, our job is to make it charming and good. So let's focus on that. Or, get into the artistic side and only do the things in a style you agree with. But
Well, and I think to the point too, maybe a good thing to cap this off of, a lot of this style was used to kind of humanize these big tech companies originally, and then it, filtered out to pretty much everything. But maybe a good reminder to sort of be mindful of some of the implications of the projects that you choose to take or the things you choose to make, and what those are actually accomplishing.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, and we need to take these ideas and say, all right, with design, I can make the things that I care about palatable and spread further. So let's go ahead and take some of that energy forward with us. Some optimism here at the end of our.
Yep.
Hey, I saw Jack's talking about severance stuff. Like, we should have done some severance things. The innies love Corporate Memphis. Your Audi likes Corporate Memphis. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us today. We're hitting time. I'm Evan Abrams. You can find me online at EC Abrams. He's Kyle Hamrick. You can find him at Kylosaurus Rex on the internet. We are most active on Blue Sky and Instagram, so you can find us in those places in that order. But if you want to see more of us, check out the show archive at motiondesignhotline.com. Send us your problems at the link, and we'll be back here most Wednesdays. So we'll see you then and there and here. Yeah. Till next time, stay creative, be kind to each other. We'll see you all around the internet.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.